All right, we're going to go live here on TikTok here in just a second. We're already live here on Instagram and YouTube. I wanted to welcome everybody to our Friday live show every Friday at 7 o'clock. I'm your host, Sean Lawyer. My background's as a soldier, and now I'm a spiritual seeker, just trying to find people with different points of view so we can all have better conversations and have open-minded dialogue. So this week, our guest co-host is JJ Flinzanes. Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. JJ works with conscious, spiritual truth seekers to remove emotional blocks to success. I'm really excited to hear about that. You're also an empowerment strategist. And throughout this live stream, we're going to have your website scrolling along a ticker. And we're also going to have it in the description of the permanent YouTube and podcast. And I always think it's best for people to kind of hear direct from the person what they're all about. I do love your energy and everything that I've seen from you. And why don't you, tell us about yourself?
Broad question. Tell me about myself. No,
It
uh,
is broad.
it is, and I can talk for days without taking a breath. So, but
That's
I'm
good.
also really good at sound bites. I'm a spiritual truth seeker. Astrologically, I'm a Pisces with a lot of Sag. What that means is I'm a highly emotional, highly intuitive, empathetic, empathic person who had to figure out how to make that make sense in a world that we live in, and also just sort of asked questions along the way of why anybody does anything, why I feel the way I feel, why did I react the way I reacted, why do they do what they did, why do you do that and I do this, and so that's just led me on a journey and a path of asking questions and looking for the answers, and throughout that has been expressed in both right and left brain ways. That is how the empowerment strategist title came to be, because I think that at the end of the day, everyone is searching to feel relief or a feeling, whatever that may be. It could be love, connection, peace, ease, safety, but they all feel like some form of relief, some form of like, like I can relax and everything is okay. And as a actress, then personal trainer, into empowerment strategist, the clients that I've worked with, the people that, I mean, I look back at my acting days and I see how, like the stage, not necessarily movie or film, because that's a different kind of acting. When you're on the stage and you have to be in the moment and there's not a redo, I would see people come to life. And I would come to life. I used it as a way to be self expressive, because in my current reality or my past reality with my parents or in my, upbringing, you don't have permission to explore all your feelings. It's not okay to be really, really angry or really, really happy or really, really whatever. Like, you can't stretch because someone else is going to get upset or it's going to bother someone. It's going to cause a scene. And so I think I just felt intuitively that acting gave me the ability to stretch and to explore those parts of myself in a safe place.
Right.
And yeah, and then just moving into things that interested me as an actress who wasn't wanting to wait tables forever, and cared about my body. I learned about biomechanics and woke up my left brain like, whoa, I actually am smart and good at science. And so then the personal training thing gave me that confidence in my ability to learn, because in high school I got good grades but not straight A's. Like, I made honor roll, but I was never the book smart kid. And so, math and science, the people that thrive in math and science, their brains work a little differently. I was more of the kid that loved the Englishes and the languages and the poetry and the music and math was fine. But so I just have confidence in myself. And then as I started to learn science of the body and get really good at it, I developed a new sense of self. And then I sort of learned how to balance those two sides of me. And then in the personal training world, people would hire me for nutrition and fitness and weight loss. And I cared more about joint rehab, and I cared more about saving them for the future. And then I wanted to get into their brain, because I can give you the perfect routine for you that's designed for you. I can give you the perfect diet that's designed specifically for you with your goals and everything else in mind. But whether you do it or not is about what you think and what you believe and what motivates you. So I've always been interested in the mental and emotional stuff and spiritual stuff. So that just sort of came in also as a problem solver. If I'm a great problem solver. I had a client that had back pain, and I did all the right physical things, but when I couldn't fix the back pain, I went, okay, well, what else is there to learn? And that was when I was really got into Dr. John Sarno's work. Healing Back Pain is his first book. The Mind Body Connection is the second. And basically, most people with chronic lower back pain, it's rage. It's repressed anger. So that made complete sense to me as a Pisces, as an emotional being, as an energetic understanding of who I am. And so all of that just sort of cultivated into a need and a desire to keep expanding in what I was doing with people and not want to just do the physical stuff. I wanted to talk about what motivated them. I wanted to talk about why they were doing what they were doing. And all the while, I was also trying to save my marriage, and I learned everything I possibly could in that time, and did every possible thing that I could get my hands on. I grew myself a lot. I did grow in that relationship, but ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to have somebody who wants to do the work. And I love the work. The work like lights me up, and I guess it scares most other people. I do some deep stuff, so. Yeah, so that, but it was perfect. It was divine timing. It was a sacred contract, exactly the way it was. And then in 2018, I stepped into what I'm doing now. I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to, because I think I'm pretty good at this. And even though I don't have a degree in it. Someone else might say I'm not qualified to say some of these things, but I have some results, and I've got people that are changing their lives and saving their own marriages because of the work that I'm doing. And so I'm just going to step into it. And if someone doesn't like it, that's okay. You don't have to work with me. And here we are.
Well, thank you for that. I love that. One of the themes that really comes out of all that is it seems like you're very curious. Like you have this curiosity, and you're out there always like seeking and learning and figuring things out, and figuring out how that applies to kind of like the human condition, but also the spiritual condition for us.
Well, we all have these moments of, and I heard your aha moment, sort of when you could connect to that everyone is a reflection of everything. Like we're all connected, and you see it in everybody, right? We don't all have that, but we hope that everyone will eventually have that. But we have moments of expansion, moments of connection, moments of clarity, moments of seeing something that's not really there, or that is there because it's energy, but we can transcend our physical body for a second to see and understand a concept that is hard to explain. And we all have moments of learning and growth. And one of the pivotal ones for me, I mean, I think I definitely know I'm an old soul. So part of this I sort of have always known. So let's just put that down for a second and say, well, when did the light bulb go off in terms of like what fueled this movement in me? And it was in 2001. I was working with a coach. She was my coach. And she had introduced me to Abraham Hicks. I don't know if you know Abraham Hicks.
Sure.
Okay. So it was my first introduction. She sent me a CD back when we listened to CDs. And I must have listened to that CD because I was driving around all Southern California as a personal trainer, literally in hundreds of miles a day I would do. And so I was in the car a lot, and I listened to that CD over and over and again. But when I first heard Esther Hicks channel Abraham and say, you are the creator of your own reality, about like pulled off the side of the road and wrecked my car. I'm like, what? And I thought, this is great news. Now, I will brag.
It is great news. Yeah, absolutely.
It's great news. But not everybody hears it that way. I will brag that Esther and I have the same birthday. I mean, I'm a little younger, but we share the same birthday. I have the ability to channel, not like her. But I thought, okay, this is great news. If I don't like something, I can change it. Like that was the best day ever. But then I got so excited about it. I started telling everyone that would listen, and started to learn that not everybody hears it that way. I'm like, oh, okay. Some people hear it as that they feel shame. They're like, well, I didn't ask for this bad thing to happen to me. I didn't ask for this thing in the way my life is right now. Like, what are you saying, that I did it wrong, or that? So I was like, oh, okay, that's not what I mean. But that moment and everything that comes out of Esther's mouth as she's channeling Abraham always resonates 100%. Like there's no question. I don't know if you know who Dr. Bruce Lipton is. He wrote a book called Biology of Belief.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Bruce has been on my show several times. I'll be seeing him in August at his retreat up in Mount Shasta, and he just did my summit a couple months ago in August and April. And what I love about Bruce, what I said to him the very first time I had him on the show was, look, I didn't need to read your book. I said, I'm not being an arrogant person by saying I didn't need to read your book, meaning I know how to explain what's inside of it. It's just that the cover explains it. Biology of belief. Okay, yeah, my beliefs shape my biology. Yes, I get it. I'm 100% there. I do not need to be convinced anymore.
Sure.
So I have the book. I recommend the book, but at that time I hadn't read the book because I'm like, I don't need to read it. I get it. You got me at hello. Like the biology of belief is right. So there are some people that are very still in their Newtonian physics of, I need to be convinced that energy is a thing. I need to be convinced, and I'm not, and I never have been. I'm the person who has an understanding of this, but doesn't necessarily need the research to convince me. But unfortunately, in the world, other people do. Like I love Dr. Kelly Turner. I don't know if you know Dr. Kelly. She wrote Radical Remission. And I said the same thing to her. So yeah, no, this is not disrespectful. And I really couldn't have done it, but I really could have written this book 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Like everything that you're talking about is what I've been teaching and doing. But the thing is, she went out and researched over 1,500 at the time. I know there's way more now. 1,500 radical remission patients that were going to die. That doctors said, you go home and like get your affairs in order because there's nothing else we can do for you. And out of those, and 1,500 people had a radical remission and lived way outside their diagnosis, if not, years and years and years and years, unexplainably. So she just researched all these people and what they did. And she came up with 10 things that they all did the same. And of the 10 things, 7 of them are mental, emotional, and spiritual. Right. Again, one of these concepts, I'm like, yeah, like it's so obvious to me, but I'm the person who's not going to spend the time in the research. I'm not going to spend the time in the science because I don't need to. Someone else needs to, because they need to be convinced of the other world that we can't see, smell, taste, or touch, but that is as real as the world that we're in. So that's, I'm curious and I get excited, but that moment was life-changing.
Yeah, no, I love that was kind of like the ultimate thought that you had when listening to Esther Hicks, because that's it, right? Like we create our own reality. And I think that for me, like you saying that, for me, that's like the essence of my spiritual belief probably is that what I have in my consciousness, what I have in that universal connection or divine thing, and whatever I put out from that's going to be my reality. And it really changes your whole perspective and mindset. And then that changes what you see. It changes what you receive. It changes everything about your being, both within and without.
Well, whatever, we manifest what we believe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I want to talk to you about manifestation and law of attraction because you talk about it a lot. And for me, it's like, you can't just try to manifest $1 million if you don't believe that you're going to get $1 million, right? It's like it is belief. You have to believe it, and it's like flying in Never Never Land, right? And the Lost Boys, like you've got to believe you can do it to do it.
Yeah, so. I started my podcast in almost 10 years ago, and I started it as an outlet. Well, it started as a test for me to figure out how the universe wanted me to show up, because I had so much content in so many different areas. I was like, okay, tell me what you want, because I don't know where to focus, because I just want to talk about all of it. And again, that's okay to talk about all of it, but I wanted to have like an entry point. And I thought, because I'd written a book called Fit to Love, that might be like single people. Oh boy, was I wrong. So when I finally, after 18 months and 350 episodes that were both not all video, but I would do like three camera HD video shoots on exercise and food. And then I would have audio interviews and solo shows. So to make a 6-day week show, after I did that for 18 months, my intuition said, not everybody understands that this brand has all these different, very specific keywords in it. And it's too much under one brand. You need to separate them. And a mentor of mine at the time probably would have said, no, don't do it. Keep going until you have success. And I'm like, yeah, but success isn't going to come right now. People are confused. This Fit to Love is not a brand that they go, oh yeah, that's spirituality. I don't know that. Or Fit to Love. Yeah, that's, yes, relationships and fitness. I got that part. But all of the behavioral and psychological and spiritual things I was talking about, like they wouldn't have known that. And they wouldn't have known I was a specialist in biomechanics, or that I talk about easy paleo, gluten, dairy-free cooking. Like they just thought, oh, healthy food. So when I separated the shows and made them their own show, that was 2016 when I launched Spirit, Purpose, and Energy in late October of 2016. It took less than 2 months, and I was getting emails. Oh my God, this show is changing my life. Where can I get more? And I was like, what? This was like the best response and I had 18 months of a 6-day week show, pumping out content like a crazy person. And didn't get that kind of response that I got but of course, not being surprised, because I was talking about law of attraction. So of course I attracted the people who wanted what I was excited about. And that's exactly what happened. And so for me, a lot of people found me at a time where, they may or may not have known about Abraham, but even if they did, what I've learned over the years is my brain, all of our brains work differently. I'll just say that. But I know how my brain works is that I will listen to something, see something, read something, be a part of something. And if it doesn't make sense to me in the order in which it's presented, my brain will quickly rearrange it so that it makes sense to me. And then I'll act as if everyone else did the same thing because I'll forget that that's what I did because it's so happened so fast. And I'll look around like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I'll look at people and thinking, why aren't you reacting the same way I'm reacting? Why aren't you getting this? And it's A, astrology, and then B, this whole like rearranged brain thing that I do. So I started explaining law of attraction in a more left brain way, in a mechanical way that people could understand. And they appreciated the science aspect because for a lot of people, law of attraction was too woo-woo, it's too spiritual, and that's ridiculous. Like, oh yeah. But I would make sense of it, again, quantum physics. Like I gave science. I'm like, here's the science. This is science. And yes, it's about emotion, but emotion is energy. And I think that's how it got to be successful is because people would share that with other people. And I've even had people say, you've convinced me, or you've really taught me the mechanics of law of attraction. Because if you've only seen The Secret or you've only talked about a vision board, people have, oh yeah, I tried, it didn't work. I'm like, because you don't really understand it. On one end, it's very simple, but actually the application is not.
Right. Yeah. And there's that aspect of what you are manifesting or attracting out in the universe. I mean, I think there's that aspect of am I meeting the universe halfway too, right? Like it's about like, it's not, the universe isn't always coming to me. Sometimes I'm going to it. It works both ways. It's a balance, I think. Do you see it that way, or do you think that it's just one
I think
way or
it's
the
just
other?
a match. You know what I create a course. It's the Law of Attraction Mastery course that I offer people. It's on my site and everything. But I do teach a lot of law of attraction on the show. Well, I taught a lot in the earlier episodes. I mean, they're still there and people could listen to them, but I'm not as much teaching anymore because I kind of feel like, okay, we've gotten it. Although I will say, since we are live, I am holding a 14-day free manifestation challenge starting July 1st. And I used to do these all the time. And I only brought this back. It used to be 30. And this year I decided, okay, I'll do it again, but it needs to be less. So I asked them like 7 or 14, and I was like 14. I'm like, okay, great. So the first one was in, I think, January, February. And this is the second one that I've done since I've kind of rehabilitated it. So anyway, but it's free. And so I do a little bit of teaching in there and I give people tools and skills and stuff that they can use. But I kind of felt like, okay, you understand it now. Anyone that's been following me for any length of time has gone through the shows because I have people that have been with me for 6, 7 years, 8 years. And even though they understand it and even though they've applied it, we forget. Before this, I was leading a full moon ceremony. And, one of the things that people wanted to feel today was stability because we just entered into Cancer, but it's a full moon in Capricorn. And those energies are very specific and they bring out vulnerability in ways of security and stability and connection with family and your house and your home environment. And so I had a lot of different energies people wanted to activate. And so I reminded everybody of who they were. And even me, when you're in a out of alignment and you're spinning around, you forget that you have non-physical energy, like more than you can even imagine there to support you. But we forget, we get cut off and we think, oh, I'm just going to do this all myself. I got to figure this all out myself. It's like, no, you don't. And actually that's not manifestation. We are manifesting 24/7, whether you know it or not, and whether you like it or not. You're in alignment with something and you're getting something.
No, I love that you emphasize the fact that this doesn't have to be something that you do alone. Like, because I really think that a lot of times I say this often on this channel, but people get so caught up in, oh, I've got to do this by myself. It's lonely. It's this dark night of the soul, or it's this path I've got to forge on my own. But really, like, one, that's not really what humans do, and even from a spiritual perspective, we're stronger together. So I think that's a really, really healthy approach to moving ahead. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have some deep, the most meaningful relationship or anything. It can just be people who have similar vibes, similar energy. Like you said, it's all energy, right?
Well, when I launched Spirit Purpose Energy in 2016, and then in 2 months had people saying, I need more and I want more. And I was like, oh, okay, well, now what? What do I do? I don't have anything to offer them. Because I had, as a personal trainer, I had programs. I had, I had a book. I had 2 books by then. And so I had things to sell people, and I was waiting to make my funnels. I was like, okay, let me get all things off of my desk that are easy and have no attachment. Right.
Right. Yeah, I got you.
And I had nothing for Spirit Person Energy. It was my guilty pleasure. I wasn't planning on making a business out of it.
Right.
And the universe had a different idea. So the first thing I created was a manifestation challenge to bring people off the podcast into a place where I could help give them tools. We could talk about it. They could learn more. We can go deeper and support each other for 30 days on how to live this. Because I look at, when you understand the tools and the exercises of how to manifest or how to get your vibration and frequency a little bit higher, it's no different than your self-care and your exercise. You can have a gym membership, but if you never go, it's not going to benefit you. You can have a treadmill, but if you never get on it, it's not helping you. So you can understand law of attraction, but if you're not like activating your high vibes, then what are you doing?
Yeah, and that comes across quite a few times when you're talking about how you kind of approach people. There's all this stuff that we can do. Like, we can do almost anything. It's infinite, right? What will we do? What will you do? Like, what's actually going to work for you? I think that's this really important thing, because anybody can think, yeah, I could do that. Well, yeah, of course you can do that. What will you do that? Are you going to do that, right?
Yeah. Well, in the group, having it, it's an accountability. So it's a free accountability for 2 weeks that you come and say what you did and hold yourself accountable, because when you hold yourself accountable, you get more stuff done.
Yeah. Accountability is, I think, it's becoming a bigger thing, I think, in both the self-help genre and in the spiritual world as well. Because accountability, it's easy to think I'm going to be accountable to myself, but we all know that Netflix calls and these other things call us, and then we end up kind of off the beaten path that we had kind of hoped that we were going to go down, right?
Yeah.
You talk about helping people create a roadmap for emotional healing, and that it can rewire their core patterns. And so when you're doing that with people, what does that process look like?
Well, this was developed over 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And more recently, like the Rewire program started last year. Yep, last year. But it came in a different form a couple of years prior to that. It was a part of an empowerment strategist certification program that I was doing. And once the certification programs sort of ran their course, and I was like, okay, I don't need to certify anybody else anymore right now. I can put a pause on this. I thought, but I want to do this work, though. This is important work, whether they're going to teach it or be trainers or not. And then that just led to like another group that I called the 6-month deep dive. And then out of that, I learned, I could fine tune this into a 3-month program, and we could focus on rewiring core wound patterns, because I've been using the core wound exercise, and I created something called a core wound map in the healing space, emotional healing space. What I have found over the 25 years I've been dealing with people, or more, definitely more than 25 years, but let's just say 25 I've been in California, and I've been curious, and I've been using law of attraction, and I've been working with people. And even though it might just be physical, there's always the element of emotional and mindset and behavioral patterns and things. So when someone, and again, also this is part of this came out of, I launched the show, especially Spirit Purpose Energy. And after I had nothing else to sell them, I'm like, well, I guess I could just do like a 2-session starter pack. I don't know. So I sold this 2-session starter pack. A bunch of people would buy it. They would come and they'd have the 2 sessions. They'd be like, oh my God, my whole life has changed. Thank you so much. This is amazing. I want more. And I've been in therapy for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And I heard this 90% of the time. And it happened so much that I was like, okay. And I myself had not had very positive experiences with traditional talk therapy. I would go with my ex-husband. We picked a few people. Not that all therapy, although I think most traditional talk therapy is ineffective. But again, if you're listening to this and you love your therapist and you are different and you are no longer triggered and you feel amazing, kudos to you. I am not talking to you. I am talking to the people who've been in therapy, who do not feel that much better, and continue to get triggered by the same things over and over again. And what you've learned to do is avoid those things, not face those things and feel different or be different. So after hearing all of that for years, I created a talk called The 3 Reasons Why Talk Therapy is Ineffective. Ruffled a lot of feathers with that one. Yeah, well, okay. Again, I have proof in front of, like, I have people who will attest to the changes, the difference. And again, I'm not trying to throw all therapy into the bus. I think in general, therapy is very needed. We all need to talk about and process and learn how to process our emotions and feelings. It's the how that you're doing it and the methods you're using and the tools that you're using. If you're using tools, there are some therapies that you just tell the same story for 10 years and you're the victim of your story, and then you just want to get compassion from other people, and that's never going to change you. So it doesn't include taking responsibility for who you are. So when I was in therapy, now this original exercise, the core wound exercise, originates from imago therapy. Imago therapy was created by Harville Hendricks, one of my favorites. Been on my show a million times. Been to his workshop, Harville and Helen, and it's in couples therapy. It's in imago, which is a couples therapy, in that both couples are to do it, or both people are supposed to do it, and it's a very specific 12 session outline that they suggest when you're starting imago therapy. So in this outline, we did it because it was part of the 12 sessions that it's included in. But what happened for me, I had a behavior that my ex-husband would say to me, you know, that doesn't work when you do that. And I'm telling you, John, 100% I agreed. I'm like, yeah, I see it. It doesn't work. I was not like even doubting that he was right. I was 100%. I knew he was right. Yep. This thing that I do does not work. Yet I kept doing it. So when I did the core wound exercise and I saw how the pattern went back to my childhood, I was like, again, it was another Abraham Hicks moment of you're the creator of your own reality. I was like, oh my God, I see where this comes from and where this goes back to. And oh my God. And in that instant, I stopped doing it. And I said to the therapist at the time, and it was a solo session I think I had with her, but I said, why isn't every single person in therapy doing this exercise before they start? Because it gives you a framework. It gives you a structure. It gives you so much information. And anyway, so I took that and I ran with it. I started teaching it. I started using it with clients. Again, how JJ's brain works differently is I have a Sag moon. I process by truth seeking. When I see something or I understand something different, I instantly have a behavioral change and I learn it. Not everyone's like that. So I had to learn through time that just because I show you your core wounds doesn't mean you change your core wounds, doesn't mean you have an awareness about that. So just working with people, I've just fine-tuned. I'm all about the most efficient, fastest way to the fastest path to growth and change. And I've had to cultivate that and work with that over the last couple of years, more like 6 years, in order to keep fine-tuning with people, how to first identify their core wounds. And there's a whole map. There's a whole process that goes with it. But I think it's like design. It's like the architect designing your house before you build it. You wouldn't go buy materials and then go to a job site and just start building a house. You'd need a plan. And so that's what the map is. It's a plan. Well, it's the diagnosis. And then from there you make the plan.
No, that's great. And I think that, I think when you look at traditional talk therapy, it sometimes doesn't get to the core. Like it touches on it, but it doesn't necessarily get us where we want to go. I mean, I myself, like when I went to the VA after I got back from all those years at war, I got matched with a therapist at the VA, and she practiced Eastern modalities. She taught me mindfulness, and she taught me Eckhart Tolle, and I wasn't able to fully immerse myself in it or wrap myself around it, but it worked. Like it started something. I probably wouldn't be where I am today if that hadn't happened. So I think it's definitely interesting when you take something like talk therapy and you say, well, that doesn't work for everybody. And even some of the people that it is working for, they're still not fixed. I think I look at like Ram Dass, right? And I love him Be Here Now when he's talking about, okay, he was a professor at Harvard, an eminent professor of psychology, but he's like, I looked around at myself, I looked around at all my peers, and I realized that we all were going to our own therapists or each other, and none of us were living joyful lives. And that always stuck with me from Be Here Now. I think it was one of the most impactful things from it, was how unhappy he and his peers were, and they were at the highest levels of their profession.
Intellectually, there's a difference of intellectual versus embodiment.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
You can understand a concept, but if you're not living it, you haven't embodied it.
Right. And one thing I love about what you talk about is it's practical. It's how do I transmute these core things that I believe are harming me, And how do I transmute that into joy? Because I think living a joyful life, like you talk about, like if we can't have fun, then what are we doing?
That's a very good question. And maybe for the people that aren't having joy, you can ask them and they can answer that. Because I think it depends on because we manifest what we believe, right? So, but most people don't even know what they believe. And the fun thing about the core wounds, it is fun. It's very fun for me. I love finding stuff that you don't even know is there. Most people don't know what they are. And they're what's running your entire belief system, because it happened between ages 0 and 7. And your brain was just recording. It wasn't negotiating. It wasn't saying, oh, my mother was really busy that day, so she couldn't come pick me up. Like, you're just recording that you've been abandoned, that you're not important, that you were ignored, that you, and these core wounds make up your subconscious beliefs. And then you live from that place for the rest of your life. Every choice you make, every choice you make is from trying to seek out getting your needs met that weren't met during those times. And also the point of view of how to interpret life, because you're going to interpret them from the wounds. Anyway, and it's comprehensive, yet it gets to be really simple and can definitely be life-changing. For me, with embodiment, because people say, well, then what do you do? I mean, not that I don't talk to the people that I work with. Of course we talk, but we explore, we go deep. I'm actually, my live event this year in October, I was doing a live event like every year, and then I took a break for like 2 years, and now I'm back doing events. And I think I probably will do an event every year, just because my love language is quality time, and people want to come hang out and experience, because it's experiential, right? So this year,
Right.
because of all this data analytical stuff that we've been doing for so long, I'm like, okay, a lot of people that I like in my communities, like I can see where their blocks are, and it's that they're not embodying it yet. Like, because they listen to podcasts, they're listening, they're reading, like they're taking it in their head, and it isn't making it into their body. And so this is my event this year is called the Embodied Healing Intensive, because we're going to move it down into the body. We're going to we're going to ask the body what it needs to share, what it wants to let go of, where it's blocked, where it's not connecting, because that's where we need it, is that embodiment piece. And you know what I really thought was really interesting and funny as I've moved to, like, I did that webinar, 3 Reasons Why Talk Therapy is Ineffective. It's on my website. If anyone wants to watch it, it's free. More came up for me after I did it. Like, oh no, I have 4 reasons. Well, there's 5 reasons. Oh, there's 6 reasons. But what I thought was, like, with my community, they're coming to me because they heard my divorce on my podcast, and some of them had to pull over because they were crying. Like, they've watched me, and I ask every time I'm in a group of people that are from my show, raise your hand if you've seen me grow in the last year. All hands go up. I don't teach anything I don't do. I don't teach anything I haven't experienced. And what is interesting about when you think about therapy is how many of us know anything about our therapists. Do you know how they handle conflict? Do you know if they've ever been in a divorce and how they reacted to it? You don't, because that's not the relationship. The relationship is clinical. It's, I'm the therapist, you're the patient. I'm going to build a rapport with you, but it's all about you. You never know anything about me. So I don't know if you're any better. You know how many therapists I know that suck at relationships? And again, I'm not trying to throw everybody under the bus,
Sure.
but they're human too. And I want to know, when I choose someone to lead me, to guide me, that you've been through something similar and you've come out the other side better than you were before. I want to trust that you have experienced something that I can then respect and feel like you know what you're doing, versus just spout out some, like, ask me, how am I feeling today? Oh, that was terrible. That's terrible for you. And how did that make you feel? And you know, and all the while there's this disconnect. And I think for us, having communities and people that know, like, and trust us, they come, you know, when people are ready for me, they're like, they just send me an email. Okay, I'm ready. They send it, they fill an application. I'm ready. I don't have to do the dance of, here's why you should trust me. Here's what I do. Here's what I've overcome, because they know, and they already have a resonance, and it's easy.
Yeah. Well, no, I think when you're approaching something, especially from the spiritual side, you've done practical stuff on the body side as well. I mean, one, you've got material and content out there that people can reference, and like you said, people know who you are; they can see it. And
Well, people listen to my show, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
by no means super famous or anything, but like,
no, but I mean, like what I mean, they can go back and they can see this is who JJ is. I can go out there and see who she is. I can see her talk. I can look at her content, and I can kind of get a feel for who and what she is. And when people have gone through something, and you're trying to help someone else go through that same thing, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and that's, I think, how you earn credibility.
Yeah.
I think people are less, well, some people, Some people just want the degrees. They just want to know that you have a degree. And some people will sit back and go, I've seen you grow. I've watched you transform. I look at what you manifest and you can do it. And I want you to teach me how to do it too.
Sure. Right, and that goes back to, you know, curiosity. Like, I think if people can be curious about themselves and want to grow, there's a tremendous, there's a lot of positive traction when it comes to awareness, right? Like, awareness is this amazing thing that helps us move forward and have traction in whatever path we're trying to go down. You know, you've talked about law of attraction, manifestation. Are there any other spiritual philosophies, religious ideas that resonate with you quite a bit? Like, what comes up when I ask that? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think that when we're here, we have law of attraction to work with,
Right.
that we can create our own reality based on what we decide to focus on, how we decide to emanate and feel and interpret, and of course, obviously, our actions and behaviors from that. However, for the tragedies that people can't make sense of, I do believe in soul contracts. I do believe that we choose this life and that we choose the contracts before we get here. And that, and this is also a law of attraction principle, the contrast is necessary for expansion. You can't, it's not all just one color or one level. Like if we just all were all happy all the time, like that doesn't make it, like it's not fun actually. Like there's something to
Sure.
cycles. There's something to in order to expand. If we think about our consciousness, in fact, I did a summit finally for the first time this year. It was called the Consciousness Upgrade Summit. And I thought about it. I decided to do it 5 years ago in 2020, and I bought the URL and I was like, okay, I'm going to make this consciousness upgrade. And it was going to be a product, not a summit. And then I just kept checking in. It wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time. And then all of a sudden it was the right time. I'm like, okay, here we are 5 years later. And now I'm doing it. And our consciousness, we can see the kinds of things we're talking about now versus what we're talking about 5 years ago versus 10, 20, 30 years ago. We can go back in our families and see what our parents and our grandparents were concerned with. They weren't asking if you were happy. They were asking if you could pay your bills and afford food and you know, and you had a job and you had a 401k. They didn't care if you were happy or not. They wanted you to survive. It was about survival. And so we have seen that the kinds of content that we're talking about right now we have grown in our consciousness. Now, not everybody, but you know, but that's
Sure.
how it's always going to be. It's always going to be a bell curve, and there's always going to be somebody, you know, at the leading
Yeah.
edge, and there's always going to be, you know, people lagging behind, and there's going to be the middle and where most people are. But we've been moving. And so for me, when I look at soul contracts and the fact that before I got here, I decided I was going to marry that guy and I was going to get divorced because that marriage was my master's degree of me. There was no circumstance where I would have worked as hard and be as dedicated to uncovering and learning as much as I possibly could about myself and this work in order for me. I wouldn't have done it in any other way.
Right.
But this was the container that I needed in order to do it. And so for every reason, it was perfect. There was no, I mean, literally all parts of it, even though, you know, so there's no mistake. I don't believe in mistakes. I believe in divine guidance and contracts. And even though it may be tragic, sometimes that tragedy, like a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard, people that have had cancer say cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. It made me wake up and change my life because the path I was on wasn't good. Now,
Right.
that's not everybody because some people die of cancer, but generally, or somebody's death in a family that happens early stimulates an awakening in them.
Right.
I think that's my belief. Soul contracts resonates very deeply with me as a definite old soul. And I think that's how I make sense of the bad things that happen in the world, so to speak, and the things that people think are horrible. You know, like I have an expanded view. It's not just of right now. And it doesn't mean I'm distant from, or I don't feel pain or empathy or I don't care. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that there are things outside of our control, but I do believe we all planned it ahead of time.
Right. No, I can subscribe to that. I believe in life, you know, death and rebirth and kind of the cycle of things like that. So that resonates with me. And I think that the suffering that we go through, the pain that we experience, the trauma that we see out there, it gives us great contrast to the light. And like I said, you know, my time just like everybody has experiences. I went to war. Those experiences shaped me. I saw a lot of darkness. I was a part of a lot of darkness, and so now I can see the light better. I can be more aware that I get a choice of whether I look at darkness or I look at light. So if I choose to look at light, then I'm going to lift myself up and probably, in my own way, lift up a little bit of the world around me as well. So, yeah, I think the soul contract idea is a solid way to look at things. I think it's a good perspective for people to kind of know how the universe is kind of acting, you know.
Well, and here's another reason why I love it. And this is, by the way, this is Carolyn Mace's work, Soul Contracts. If you believe that you were dealt a bad hand, I got the wrong parents, I'm in the wrong part of the world,
Right.
that doesn't feel good, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing. You are a victim, period, of that circumstance. But if you decide you've chosen it for some reason, all of a sudden you open up to possibility of, what could it mean? Maybe there's purpose behind this. That small shift, because again, you're not doing anything about it. You're here. I mean, unless you're just gonna like kick off and then try again, but you won't remember. But it'll be the same thing over and over again. So that's, in my opinion, I lean towards people taking a radical self-responsibility as much as they possibly can, even in areas where you don't think you can, where you're like, I have nothing to do with that. I'm like, okay, and in what way could you take some responsibility for that, just because it will help you to make decisions about what you can do about it, or nothing, or how to feel about it. But if all of a sudden I'm a victim of it, forget it, game over. You're going to feel terrible and powerless.
Oh, well, I like that. And that idea of feeling powerless. And we've talked about this on our channel before, but that idea that there's a systemic thing where if you live in poverty, we can't lift everybody out all at one time, the way society works, the way our cultures work. However, at a very individual level, there's always the option to walk out. Like if you can find that reason or intention or awareness within yourself, then you have the power to walk away to wherever you want to go, or out of a situation, or to another situation, or whatever it is. So I think that individual empowerment is really important, because systemically things are really complicated. But when you break it down to the lowest common denominator and the true self, that our own being, I think we are complicated beings. But it also, in essence, it's simple to say, I have the power, I have the choice. There's a lot of power in knowing that everything that you do every single moment of every single day is a choice.
Have you read Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning?
Absolutely.
Or do you know of it? Okay, I haven't read it. There's another book I haven't read, but I have it, and I talk about it a lot. But
right.
But his story is a Jewish man in a concentration camp where all his family dies. They get killed, and he comes into himself to say, you can torture me, you can kill me, but you will never take my mind.
Yeah. No, and when I read that, there's so much that comes from that book, and it's about how one person can endure. And he also says, and this probably the most poignant part is, he said, the best of us didn't return. The best of us didn't make it. The people that made it were the people that made some really terrible decisions about how they were going to get out of that situation and how they were going to help them and their friends. Hard decisions were made. It's a pretty brutal description of life, but it's also, there's great beauty there, because there's something very freeing about reading the story and knowing that in each moment of every day we do have that choice. It's easy to say that. Like, I can sit here and say it, and you can talk about it, and we can have a conversation about it. But for someone out there to see this and then know, I actually have a choice, and that is massive power. And you just have to seize it.
It isn't easy. I will say that my best, well, besides my master's degree of myself, that's where I started to learn. That's where I had to really, become a master at law of attraction, because the life I was living, the relationship I was living, was not the relationship that I wanted. It wasn't the relationship either one of us wanted. But we tried our best to figure that out. And again, I did my best. But at the same time, I learned how to live in a reality I couldn't see.
Right.
Which is a concept people don't understand. So frequency, when you're thinking about law of attraction, isn't just you have to show it to me for me to believe it. No, it's you have to believe it first to see it. You
Yeah.
have to be able to imagine and then feel and then live in a space where whatever it is you're looking for, searching for, whatever you're wanting is in your reality. You have to connect at that level where your entire body thinks that it's real, believes that it's real in order for you to get it. That's how law of attraction works. So in order for me to elevate my relationship, and it would work, I got very, very good at living in my own reality, again, that you wouldn't have seen. I was very happy. I was very comfortable, all the things, I had a lot of love, I had a ton of compassion for him and for me. And I was trying real hard, and it all came out of love and dedication and super commitment. And, but then when it kind of all sort of broke down for real, and people were like, what? Like, I had no idea. Like, you're a happy person. I'm like, authentically, not fake happy. I was like, right, I am a happy person who happened to try really hard to live in a happy relationship, but it's really hard when we can't connect, where, our core wounds don't, whatever, all the things that aren't working. And so now when I, teach law of attraction to people and they're like, but I can't see it. I'm like, stop being so infatuated with what is. Like, that's the whole thing of law of attraction. You can't keep looking at what is and want something more. You have to get excited about it. And I just did this whole meditation 45 minutes ago that like took us in different places. And that's the whole thing. Like, you still can feel there's a study and they mentioned the secret. It's about performance, like athletic performance. You can take somebody and in their mind, hook them up to a bunch of, monitors and what are they like, they test out your brain waves and your muscle contractions, and you could take them through their race in their mind, and their body will still fire the same muscles as if they were in the race. The reality you think is in front of you is a fraction of what the reality is. It starts here. It starts in what you're looking at. And that's probably the hardest thing for people to learn or to practice or to do in law of attraction. And you don't have to jump there first. There are things you can learn and do before that, but that's the key. It's like, how do I live in a reality that doesn't exist yet so I can make it exist?
Right. Well, and beliefs come up a couple of times in our conversation today. And I believe when we're speaking of belief, when we're children, belief's easy. But, we do believe. We don't just believe in magic. I think magic probably is this very natural thing that exists when we're children, right? And so I think if we can ungrow up a little bit as we're approaching how we're going to live a more spiritual, a more grounded, a more aligned mind, body, and soul life, that we can, if we can take ourselves back to that state we were in when we were children, when belief was easy, pretty cool things can happen.
Absolutely. I think that's a response to us moving from our right brain into our left brain for survival and success. I think if we open back up that right brain, you will see the magic more.
Right. And we're conditioned, in the beginning, we're told to believe everything. We're told to believe in these amazing things, and we're taught that. And then we reach this point in our life where then society is like, actually, just kidding, don't believe any of that. And now you've got to do X, Y, and Z and get on the conveyor belt and do your rubber stamps. And then we get conditioned in the exact opposite direction of that.
Yeah. Well, and you go to go back to the Viktor Frankl and the personal empowerment. The one thing, the four things, the only four things you have control over,
right?
And you have 100% control over is what you think, how you interpret what you're observing or seeing, how then you feel about it, and then what you do or say about it. No one else can do that for you. That's what's happening in here and in the body and in the brain. So you have control over those. And I don't mean control into like, oh, don't think those feelings. You have an influence. You can heal that. You can change that. If I am looking, kids do it very well. A child is wanting something, they're teething, or they're wanting the thing that, the toy you just took away from them. And they're like, and then all of a sudden you go, look over here, and there's a puppy dog, and they go, and they go immediately from despair to joy. And we don't know how to do that, but that's exactly what we can do, but we just don't.
One of the things I'm always interested about is that intersection of our spiritual path and kind of this concrete reality that we share with each other every day. And you're a coach and a guide. So how do you stay grounded? every day? What works best for you personally?
Well, I make sure to give myself the things I need first. So it's sort of like putting yourself first.
Yeah.
And like right now I'm in a super freaking deep cleanse, so I spend hours like on self-care, and between exercise and cleansing things, and yeah, all kinds of like hours. I also make sure to create some space and some balance, and you have to sort of know yourself in terms of your own energy output. um, Again, astrologically, the Pisces in me has a lot of Sag, and the Sag is the Energizer Bunny of the signs, and I have 3 of them. So I have 0 caffeine in my body. I haven't had caffeine in like weeks, because someone today said to me, "And how many cups of coffee have you had?" I said none, um, because I'm naturally this way, and it doesn't come out of nervous energy or anxiety. It comes out of passion, it comes out of joy, it comes out of curiosity, and and I have to balance that. If I just let that run, it can cause adrenal fatigue. It could, I can get excited, and it can turn into anxiety, and it could turn
Right.
into survivor mentality, into scarcity, if it's out of balance, not of, but you have to know that about yourself. That's why I use astrology, because it helps me to see where people go to naturally. Like if you're an air sign, a lot of air signs tend to have more anxiety than anybody else because they live in their head, because they're usually disconnected from their bodies, and they love thoughts and ideas and concepts, and that's awesome. And sometimes they're not connected to their feelings or to their body or to being grounded. And I said, I definitely don't have a lot of earth in my chart, but I live in a beautiful place that I always wanted to live in. I'm outside daily. I meditate, I exercise, I eat well. I just hosted this full moon. It's in my member group, and quite honestly, like I don't need to do it, but I do it because it gets me to do it. If
Right.
I'm not leading the meditation, I'm probably not going to join it. So,
Yeah.
so I offer a new moon circle and a full moon ceremony every month that it makes sense on the calendar, along with our group coaching. Obviously, group coaching it makes sense, but the other things, I'm like, well, if nobody shows up, I won't do it. But if everybody shows up, then now I'm meditating. Now I'm doing the breath exercises because I'm leading it. It's my way of, I get paid for it, but it's my accountability.
Right.
So I think you have to know how your energy systems work. And sometimes if I do a really, really long day, like yesterday was a little too many people. I had like 5 clients and a podcast, and I went, that was one too many. Uh, right. But
Right.
like when to take breaks, when to go outside and recharge, when to take a nap, when to get a massage, when to go in the hot tub or the pool, or when to take a bath. So I do all of those. I'm highly, highly attuned to and attend to myself in that way. And I would recommend that people ask different questions to figure out what's right for them, and to remember that your energy systems, your body, is like a battery, and it needs to be recharged, and don't let it go to 0 before you start to recharge it.
Yes. Don't let it go to 0 before you recharge it. I feel like you could just put that on like a giant neon sign and probably walk around with it and spread the gospel. Uh, and like you said in the very beginning when you first started talking about that, you said take care of myself first, and that's self love and self care. And I think I think we could replay that segment of you just now over and over again, and people would get an idea of what it means to take care of yourself, what it means to be grounded and centered. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I have, and it comes out of the contrast of my mother not taking good care of herself, or
Right.
it's not like I have that example in my family necessarily. And but that was necessary for me to be who I am, and not that she
Right.
like is horrible to herself or anything. She's not, but or abusive to herself. But there's a total lack of self love. And so I'm on the 180 of like, well, I don't want to be that, and I want to like myself. And so thank you for teaching me what not to do. And she does want to love herself. She just has blocks. She has her own blocks of self confidence, and her own court wounds that, of course, she'll never ever ask me about. So and that's okay.
That's right. Yeah. No, totally understand. One thing that I work a lot with, and I wanted to get your opinion on it. I work a lot with higher purpose, dharma, and what people's, because I think we're each kind of in the universe for something specific to us. Like, do you ever see that when you're working with people? getting in touch with what their higher purpose is and how that helps them. I'm interested in how you see that in your actual when you're working with people.
So I use my intuition, as people have told me. They're like, you like channel stuff that you shouldn't know. I'm like, okay. I had to have that reflected to me because I would have said that, because to me, what I see is what I see, and how come everybody else can't see it? Anyway, I use Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap, in a lot of the work that I do with people to start the conversation of their zone of genius and then upper limiting. And I think it's a perfect complement to law of attraction, because it makes sense of why people don't get what they want, even if they think they're doing all the right things. It's because you have a deservability container or temperature gauge that says, I believe I only deserve this much love, success, joy, and abundance. And when you ask for more than you are able to receive, you will self-sabotage. So between astrology, which I use a lot, and understanding someone's zone of genius, I start to cultivate and help them see a higher purpose for their being. Because part of your zone of genius comes out of your life experience. It's not some skill set that you have. It's not a genius that you haven't been exploring. It's a genius you've been living that you don't even know it's there, because it's just a part of your story, and everybody has it. And so honing in on that, plus again, looking at all the energetic parts of who we incarnated in being. Like your true node in astrology is who you came to, what you came here to learn. So when you know your true node, you can literally, there's a list of, here are the things you're going to work on, here are the things you're going to let go of, here's why you're here. And I mean, again, it's not always completely 100% accurate, but there's enough there to work with to say, oh, when you know that this is the lesson you're here to learn, you're like, you don't feel so burdened by it. You're like, you can take a step back and be like, oh, there I go again, getting all triggered about being devalued, because that's part of my lesson on this earth plane that I chose right now in this human body. So I think that there has to be, so I look at that as a way to show people and come up with and work with, what resonates with them and what parts of that is true for them and what is their life journey. And then from there, we can extract what their higher purpose is. I don't know how you feel about, and we don't have to discuss it, I'm just going to say it because it's part of the story, but a couple of years ago, I got involved with a cancer doctor, and who is she's not Western medicine, allopathic, although they will use chemo if necessary, but they've got a 10-step program, and emotions are a big part of it. And I thought, okay, well, what do you teach about emotions? And so after working with her and her patients and her doctors for a while, the idea of psychedelics came in, and I'm a very squeaky clean kind of, I drink wine, but I was a very squeaky clean. I didn't smoke pot. I didn't do drugs. I never did any of those kinds of things. And I always saw it as, I don't care if you do it, but I'm not going to do it, because why would I do it? I understand the reason why I'm doing it. So I can feel better, but it's temporary. So why would I do it? Can't I just feel better? Can I just get there naturally? Why do I got to use a drug to get there? But then I started to see, and plus I have a lot of friends that overdo things that, not a lot of friends, but I have some friends that I see do things and I don't respect. I don't know that I see it changing them. So, but in the context of emotional healing and breakthroughs in cancer patients, I understood, and neuroplasticity and activating parts of your brain, I understood that, a lot of cancer patients outlive their diagnosis because they lose their fear of death, because they have a death experience in a psychedelic journey. They sometimes they have whatever experience takes them to a different plane, like what the experience that you had with your brain and seeing things very differently, having that moment. That's what sometimes psychedelics can do for people, guided correctly, dosed correctly, whatever. And if they're open to that, and that right there changes how they look at everything, which then changes their body chemistry and changes their biology of belief. So I started exploring, because I was getting ready to write my fourth book, and I thought I was blocked and I didn't know why I was stalling. And I'm like, oh, this is why I'm stalling, because I can't really talk about emotional healing if I don't have any experience or understanding about the role of psychedelics in healing any kind of PTSD and traumas and depressions and anxiety. So I was like, okay, let me go explore. So this is what I have been, what I've been exploring. And so I watched the How to Change Your Mind. So if anyone hasn't seen Michael Pollan's How to Change Your Mind, he goes over 4 different kinds of psychedelics, and he mentions tobacco in the beginning, but then he goes over LSD, psilocybin, MDMA, and peyote. And so I watched it with my partner, and I just sort of intuitively thought, okay, I'm going to just listen and I'm going to feel into which ones I'd be open to. And I was like, LSD, okay, sure. That one kind of calls to me. MDMA did not call to me, mostly because I have a judgment about other people who are doing it. Psilocybin called to me, and peyote was like, okay, well, I respect that it's indigenous and I shouldn't touch it. And if anyone ever invites me into a ceremony, I will say yes, but I will not search it out. Well, last year at Dr. Bruce Lipton's event in Sedona in August, I sat next to a shaman, and when we finally talked about what he did, he's like, I do, it didn't use peyote. He uses, what's the other one? Mescaline. So, but mescaline is another name. San Pedro. He uses San Pedro. So I was like, well, funny enough, I have said that I would never search it out, but if it appeared and I was offered, I would say yes. He's like, well, I am inviting you to a ceremony. I was like, okay. So a month later in September, I did a San Pedro ceremony, and that medicine is very, very different. It's than psilocybin, and you do a ceremony around it, and you ask grandfather, which is what that represents. Like you have to get real clear about your intention. Unlike psilocybin, which is going to take you wherever you need to go. Forget that you want to do something; it's just going to take you, which I actually love. But so I decided, like, I didn't know what to focus on, and so we had come up with my ask of the grandfather was, please show me the highest expression of my destiny. That was my okay. So I take the San Pedro, and my body vibrated like a vibrator. I wasn't shaking. Like if I could hold my hand still, it was my cells and the light. It was like my cells had been turned on, and I was vibrating at the highest frequency my body could handle. So much so that, just to give you a visual, it's sort of, when you get to that end of the you're almost at orgasm, like that little thing that you're trying to sustain. Okay, I was living that for like an entire 24 hours. Maybe not 24 hours. Maybe it was like 14 hours. No, actually it was closer to 24 hours. I was at that level for 24 hours, and I did not know what to do with it. And I had to, it really, like, it took me over, and I had to work with it. And I was like, oh my God. I was trying to like release it, and it wouldn't release. I was like, okay, how do I be with this? It was very new, and it really uncovered some things for me. But when I was with it long enough and I could like settle into it, it showed me something that I do believe intellectually, but I never embodied or experienced, which is that I believe that you, me, and many other light workers, literally just being you changes the planet, because we're literally raising the frequency by being in our highest frequency. It signals and messages out and impacts everybody, because we're living at a frequency that is elevating everybody. And so what the message that I got was, just keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. You don't got to do anything different. Just keep doing what you're doing. Be who you are. Be it proud. Be in alignment. Be in integrity. And just keep being it, because it by itself will affect other people, the people it's supposed to, and it will affect the planet. That's all I can do. There's nothing else I can do. And so I really got that. Like, I embodied that so much. So I was like, wow, okay, yeah, cool. And even with the shaman that I was working with, I was really clear. I was like, okay, like there are often times where I'll learn something and then I'll be like, oh, I want to go do that. I want to learn that, and I want to do that. And I said, no, I don't need to do that. You do that. I mean, I am doing that, but differently. You do what you're doing. I'm going to do what I'm doing. We can work together, and I can help everybody, because we all play a part in this up-leveling our consciousness. And I just know that all this firecracker, Energizer Bunny energy of mine, as long as I'm in alignment, as long as I remember who I really am spiritually, I'm making a shift on the planet just by breathing.
I'm making a shift on the planet by just breathing. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And thank you for bringing up the issue of psychedelics. I think it's really useful. I think it's something that should be talked about in the self-help, in the psychological and mental health field, and also in the spiritual realm. And I think, as a veteran, I'm also looking at what it can do to save the lives of brothers and sisters in arms that have all this trauma that they can't get behind, and then amazing things that can happen with it. So I think we're really approaching a brave new world when it comes to what that type of like natural medicine supervised is going to be able to do for people. So
I hope so.
It's very exciting.
I mean, there are people taking all kinds of pills or pharmaceuticals that are completely legal that make the pharmaceutical companies a lot of money, and they wreck your gut, they wreck your kidneys, and they have side effects that you're going to have to take more pills to overcome. And we're talking about a plant that grows out of the ground, that's been growing out of the ground for since the earth was here. And literally that's it. That's all you're doing. You're just taking the plant, and the plant's doing the thing. It's meant to be helping you in some way. And unlike some other substances that get abused, like you can't abuse these. You can't even function. Like who? This is not, I mean, like someone said, well, I'm afraid to do it because I have some clients they've been in recovery. And he's like, oh, I used to do those, or I'm afraid to do those. I'm like, they cannot, this is not addictive. You don't want to feel like this. Like when you do a journey, you can't live if you're always in a journey, that's not a place. But again, I use it therapeutically, not recreationally. I'm not supportive of any of this recreationally. I'm supportive of it very intentionally, very in alignment with a spiritual path and an awakening of sorts, and to be helped, to be guided, to be supported, and to use the experience and to integration. That's the other thing, because you can go get some anywhere and have your own little thing. And then when you're done, you go back to what you were doing before. Like if you don't integrate the learnings and the teachings and the things you learn and see, then it was a fun time that really didn't have an impact on you.
No, I think that's a great qualifier at the kind of the end of this segment of conversation, because if you're using it intentionally and aware and you're using it for a purpose, then it's going to take you somewhere. Is there anything, I mean, we could probably talk all night, but like, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to tell the audience about?
Well, what do you think they need?
I don't know. I just, is there anything that you kind of close with, or that you want to leave people with? If not, that's okay too, because I think we've had a really good conversation. So.
Well, I think, again, not really having an intimate connection to your audience necessarily, or really understanding who they are, what they're looking for. If I was to use sort of your background and your story and what you're about to, if I speak to that, people that are searching for more, or to feel better, or to have an ascended experience in their lives, or to, come from a different consciousness or perspective. Well, first and foremost, again, to go back to what I said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. Right. And so you're searching, and that's why you're here. And in terms of what I can offer, my podcast is free. I got more content than you could decide you are going to be all about me for like the next couple of years, and you still couldn't catch up. Okay. So go to the podcast and look around, Spirit, Purpose, and Energy, see what calls to you, what speaks to you. If this resonates with you, if you're still here right now and you haven't decided that I'm way too much for you, which I'd be totally fine with if you are, but go check out the podcast and see what's there. On my website, I've got three webinars that are free that people can watch. The first one is 3 reasons why talk therapy is ineffective. So if, again, you're in therapy and you don't feel like you're as far along as you'd like to be, or that the things you came in with aren't completely solved, or you have that really fun question of like, oh, why am I getting triggered? I worked on that in therapy. Yeah, but you didn't live it. So there's the difference. You can talk about it for 10 years, but until you're faced with it and you act differently, you think differently, you interpret it differently, it's not going to be different. I don't care how much you know about it. But anyway, there's that talk. And there's also how emotions affect healing and disease. So if you struggle with any kind of chronic pain or anxiety or depression or cancer or any, again, chronic disease, like I said, that is all about the science around how emotions affect healing and disease. I have something for podcasters. I don't know how many people listen to your show that are podcasters, so that's about making money. But other than that, again, lots of free tools, lots of free things. Podcast is free. If you, you're feeling called, then you can reach out and, I don't know, and tell me what you're looking for. I'm happy to curate a personalized list of podcast episodes, whether it be audio or video, and tell you where to go. 14-day manifestation challenge. If anybody wants to join that, it's happening July 1st, but you got to sign up before July 1st because you're going to get the instructions and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's it. I mean, I would say I'm here as a service to, offer ideas that might be new to people. And I would just say, let the seeds plant themselves. And as they start to grow, if you at all feel compelled, reach out and find me, find something. Do something.
Right.
That was what I would say. Do something.
No, that's a great advice. And your website's been scrolling this whole time. So yes, everybody, please check out JJ's website. Join the challenge. And You've been a great guest. Thank you so much for coming on. Next week, we're going to have co-host Joe Bouchard. He's kind of a Renaissance man, host of philosophy podcast From Nowhere to Nothing. I'm sure we'll have an interesting conversation about philosophy, spirituality, psychology. And JJ, if you'll stick around for a second after we shut down, we'll close it out.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Thank you.